Be Frankie.
Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix.
Yo, what's good? It's your boy B-Dale. If you're new to this channel, hit the like button, the share button, the subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. In tonight's transmission, we're going to be talking about the return of the Anunnaki when you're talking about the return of the 7-foot aliens, when it's actually talking about the resurrection of ancient DNA that's connected to the supreme architects of the planet. Now, this is also interconnected to the amplification process when you're talking about the parasitical energy of the moon that's creating a frequency of zombification. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, get those notes out. You already know what time it is. Put the rice bowls in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. We finna get started tonight. So with that being said, we got the introduction out the way. So when you're talking about this process of the return of the Anunnaki, as I was reiterating, it's basically talking about the amplification process of the resurrection of ancient DNA, because it operates on the Trinity principle that's connected to death, rebirth, and ascension. That's activated by way of the neutrinos that's coming to the planet to where it's able to resurrect your DNA to where you become the Christ, to where you become the Anunnaki. It's not one of those things where it's subjected to, celestial beings that's coming to the planet. Yeah, we have celestial beings, but we're not in that time period right now. We have to upgrade ourselves neurologically, physically, and spiritually at the same time. That is also connected to the Trinity principle. So with that being said, the reason why they're talking about the return of the Anunnaki during the time of November, because November is an 11th month. And the 11 is the tuning forks of the frequencies of planet Earth. And that's when the veil is the thinnest, because it's a representation of the dualistic energies of the sun and the moon that created the dualistic paradox when you understand the inception of creation. Because in the inception of creation, that's when you had a quantum entanglement, which created a quantum fluctuation by way of the Big Bang, to where you had a splitting of an atom. A splitting of an atom, when you're talking about the photon hydrogen atom, creates electrons. Electrons create elements, and elements create molecules, and molecules create organs, and organs create organ systems. And those organ systems is what created this dualistic paradox that we're basically living in. So that's why you got to understand creation. Creation is connected to these numerical sequences. So the return of the Anunnaki in November is actually talking about when the veil is the thinnest, because like I said, that represents the tuning forks of the planet Earth, right? So now you also cannot negate that Donald Trump is also the 47th president. That also coincides with Crackle Barrel and all this other stuff. And we're going to get through that as we get through the presentation. Now, one thing you got to understand, when you get into, magnetic filaments and the electrical conduction that's transmuting the atmosphere, this is where you get these frequencies in our atmosphere that's basically starting to shift. So, as I was telling you guys before, human consciousness has the ability to manipulate physical matter. And that physical matter is amplified through the prana and the life force that is extracted from the top of the head, which is the crown chakra, which basically is a representation of an ascension process that has a magnetic pull. And that magnetic pull creates a neural network of forces that's connected to the space-time continuum. So this is why you're starting to see a manipulation of the atmosphere, because I was telling you, we're going through a transitional shift. We're no longer under the atmospheric oxidation levels that steals electrons from the hemoglobin. We're transmuting into fourth octave ether, which is an omicron-based atmosphere. And that atmosphere in itself has cymatic vibrations. Because one thing you got to understand is that electromagnetism is sound, and sound is, mathematics, which is geometry, frozen geometry. right? So these frequencies that's coming to the planet is manipulating the dualistic paradox, as I was telling you about, when the veil is going to be thin, because that's when these energies is going to be coming in. Because the dualistic paradox represents Jack and Bowes and Freemasonry when you look at a Masonic tracing board. Because when you go back to the galactic center, that is not ether activation to where you become a so-called Anunnaki, or your return of the extraterrestrial beings during the time of November, which is the 11th month, that represents the dualistic energies as you get back to the star Polaris. Because the star Polaris is the true sun that gives power to the dualistic celestial bodies of the sun and the moon, right? These are nothing but interstellar vortex portals that has concentric circles for incarnation and reincarnation, as above, so below, by way of the law of correspondence, right? That corresponds with your genetic format. So this is why I said, the more you raise up in vibration, you're going to manipulate the atmosphere. So that's why I said, when you get into the book of Leviticus, these are basically, this is a law book. It's a law book that is basically dismantling the process of the fact that the Canaanite doesn't have enough, electromagnetism in their genetic format to harmonize with these energies that's taking place on the planet, right? And we're going to get into the reason why they're going to amplify the process of artificial intelligence, basically mimicking the energy of the mitochondrial DNA of the black woman that's connected to the prokaryotic cell, which is the first organism in the universe. I'm going to tell you why they're mimicking that energy, because they know that the black woman's DNA is connected to the mycelium network of nature, right? She's actually the blueprint, right? Which is the womb of creation, the fingerprint of the universe. So this is what you've been seeing all over the place. This looks like some type of ontological megastructure, and it's been floating all over the atmosphere. And it says it's about over 275 miles wide, and it's a massive sky donut. And it's been going all across, St. Louis, and it's been going all over across, the geographical areas of, America as well. So this is located in Mexico. The same thing took place when you're talking about Memphis, because I told you that, Elon Musk, he is basically engineering that supercomputer to extract the energy of the chosen people in Memphis, right? Because one thing you got to understand, the words is actually, a form of spell casting, because they don't want you to understand that they did a bait and switch, because the great majority of everything in the East is actually over in the West first. So that's why I said, Africans were actually, paid to sell us out. They try to tell us that, oh, this is the motherland, when really this is the motherland, right? Because what is the purpose of building a supercomputer in Memphis, Tennessee? What is the purpose of it? Because they know that there's a lot of, electromagnetism in that geographical landmass, because you have an influx of so-called black people in that geographical area, right? So that's why I was saying, you have to pay attention to the signs. Everything, as far as like their psychological operations by way of covert operations, which is basically, hidden agendas that's connected to their corporate enterprises. A lot of times, a lot of people are not able to decipher, is this real, or is this fake, or is this a coincidence or whatever? No, it's not a coincidence that he built that computer right there, because one thing you got to understand about artificial intelligence is feeding the energy of the archonic forces. The archonic forces, they feed off the data of humans that's connected to the binary code system of the matrix, which is what they call the Saturn moon matrix. That's why I keep telling people all the time, the moon is an artificial celestial megastructure. It's the external hard drive, the planet Earth. That's not the real moon. The real moon was broke off during the time when you had an extraction of plutonium bombs that broke the planet off in half. That's why you have an inner sun, which is the black sun of what they call the core in science. Because one thing you got to understand about westernized science and westernized history, they try to tell you that information like this is pseudo, when really that anything that's built on colonization, anything that's built on imperialism is pseudo, because you're stealing culture, you're stealing historical context that didn't come from your demographic of people, right? You're stealing information, and then you're trying to alter the perception of it to try to make it seem like you were the inception of creation, when you knew that people who look like me is the inception of creation. Because when you get into microbiology and genealogy, You get the recessive from the dominant. You don't get the dominant from the recessive, right? So that's how you know that the inception of creation is all about, dark matter energy. Everything that stems from nature is dark matter energy because carbon is the building block of all civilization. So that's why I was saying there's a reason why they're in this geographical area, because they know that the true magnetism, as far as, shifting mindsets and cultures and, thought leaders, the great majority of them, they come from America. As I was telling you guys before, where's your African Michael Jordan? Where's your African Mike Tyson? Where's your African Michael Jackson? Everybody who's great come from this geographical landmass because there's a certain magnetism here. This is why they try to subjugate us so much, right? With all these technological devices by way of, technological radiation extraction that's connected to artificial intelligence. It's another way to subjugate the DNA. So that's why I said Elon Musk, this is the reason why he's putting, the supercomputer here. So like I said, I don't know this. It could be, some type of mothership that's in the atmosphere, or this can be energy extraction that is being cultivated by the supercomputer that's being created by Tesla and Elon Musk. So it's one of those things to think about. So that's why I say you can't put all your eggs in one basket. You got to sit back and delineate and decipher with spiritual discernment. Now, this is not a coincidence as well. Like I said, CERN has the ability to create, geomagnetic energy by way of frequency modification to manipulate the atmosphere to create weather modification. So a lot of times, these weather anomalies is happening because you have portals that's opening up to where you smash particles. Because when you smash particles, what happens is it creates quantum fluctuation that creates the Higgs boson particle that contains quarks and leptons. And those leptons are electrons. And those electrons has the ability to manipulate the atmosphere and open up portals to where it's able to split the photon atom. So that's why I was saying you have a manipulation by way of the atmosphere with these machines that that the beast had built, right? So it's not a coincidence that when you look at this, it kind of looks just like this as well. Something to think about. So this could be a mothership, or it can be CERN, or it could be a supercomputer. One of the two. Like I said, it's one of those things you can't put all your eggs in one basket because everything is connected. Now, this also could be the reinforcement of the timestamp of non-ether activation, because non-ether activation is cultivated by the serpent mind. The serpent mind in itself is connected to a form of neoclassical music when you're talking about Beethoven and Mozart, because the frequencies of that neoclassical music, it operates at 432 hertz, which is the non-ether activation that's connected to the olfactory nerve that creates cymatic vibrations. That is an emulation of the embryonic cell that is cultivated by the crystallization process of the flower of life. So that means that the frequency, solar transmission, is sound, and sound is vibration, and vibration is mathematics, and mathematics in itself is frozen light, and that frozen light has the ability to crystallize the biotonic energy of the carbon body. When you have the neuromelanin activated, because neuromelanin is the brain and central nervous system melanin that resurrects the Christ body. So that's why I said in the golden age, the new medicine is going to be sound, which is light, electromagnetism, right? It's all about what type of magnetism that you have on a planet in order to resurrect yourself. It's not all because you got new clothes and new shoes and all this other shit, right? That's all materialistic possessions. Are you able to reverberate at a high vibrational frequency by activating the Merkaba with the 432 megahertz frequency that harmonizes with the Schumann resonance? You have to be connected to the mycelium network of nature. You have to be connected to the Fibonacci sequence because you're a part of that. Everything in nature spirals into a 9. That's non-ether activation. 4 plus 3 plus 2 equals 9. Non-ether activation by way of cymatic vibration, because it has an octave energy to it, because it contains silicon and carbon. Intrinsic properties of electromagnetism. So that's why it tells you right here, did you know that in 1955, the International Organization for Standardized ISO established 440 hertz as a standard tuning for a musical pitch because that's the devil's interval. Because when you look at 440, it is basically the epitome of 8 because 4 plus 4 plus 0 equals 8, and 8 is connected to Saturn, and Saturn is what keeps you stuck in the artificial time analysis mechanism, which is a time loop. So when you break out of the Kali Yuga cycle by way of the non-ether activation with the 4 plus 3 plus 2 equals 9, that's how you're able to resurrect yourself and break out of the matrix. Everything is sound vibration. That's why you have to get your ass into the sun, right? To where you're no longer operating on the devil's interval. So prior to this change, the standard was set at 432 hertz. Music possesses hidden abilities that can influence our health, thoughts, and even our consciousness because a lot of the music that's operated at 440 hertz contains psychological egregores, and these psychological egregores leaves an energetic imprint on your thought process that has the ability to reconfigure your neurological chemistry. And you wonder why you have brain hemorrhages and you wonder why you can't remember certain things because one thing you got to understand about the body in itself is 75% water. And the water in itself contains light particles, and the light particles is activated by way of these musical vibrations. So that's why sometimes, in order to activate both hemispheres of the brain, when you're talking about the corpus callosum, which is based on the reinforcement of the Trinity principle, where you have death, rebirth, and ascension, and the ascension is the dove of the wings of the corpus callosum to where you're able to ascend mentally by way of the music vibration, because the ascension process takes place when the soul is able to travel on 0-point energy fields, and those 0-point energy fields is a signal that leads you up into the extraction process that's connected to the energy of the sun. Everything operates on cymatic vibrations, everything on the planet. Everything has a kinetic energy because it's the natural flow of energy that's resurrected through the sun that is being siphoned from the star Polaris. So now it says that, however, the ideal natural harmonic tune was intentionally taken away because, like I said, human consciousness has the ability to manipulate physical matter. 432 megahertz frequency manipulates physical matter. It has the ability to resurrect your body to where you become an Anunnaki. They know that the November is when the veil is thin during that process. So that's why I say you have to tap back into neoclassical music to where you're able to activate the embryonic cell to where it's able to transmute and crystallize. Sometimes you got to sit your ass down in a backyard in nature and just listen to some Mozart, listen to some Beethoven. It's going to stimulate those neurons. And those neurons, by way of neurocardiology, is going to give power to the heart chakra, which operates at 0-point energy, which is the emotional energy that's connected to the biorhythm and the circadian rhythm of nature. So now it says that the potentially leading the psychic deterioration of the collective consciousness of humanity. Human consciousness has the ability to manipulate physical matter. Human consciousness has the ability to manipulate physical matter. Why? Because God is the mind. God is the highest extension of the mind, which uses elements and matter to express itself. This is why Black anti-intellectualism is on the rise. They want to attack the mind. They want to keep you marginalized, boxed in a trauma loop to talk about things that don't even matter. They don't want you talking about stuff like this, because when you start talking about stuff like this, what happens is they try to call you pseudo. They try to call you a cult leader, right? They try to create all these, phrases and all these ideologies around the fact that you're basically trying to resurrect the planet by way of, a genuine energy, by giving people the edification of the fact that they have to use their emotions as a navigation system. It's a supplication process. Now, scientists are shocked to find that human cells can hear sound and respond to it. That's why I said, get your ass in the sun. Because like I said, the human body in itself right now is at a low frequency, but we're able to resurrect ourselves by way of the energy and the transmission of the sun. So that's why I said the sun is electromagnetic energy, frozen light. Light is sound. So just because you can't hear it doesn't mean that it's not resurrecting the body, right? That is basically, the temple, the true temple. So with that being said, Like I said, sound, light has the ability to resurrect the body to where you're able to transmute by way of conjugation, transformation, and transduction to where you're able to alchemize yourself to be an Anunnaki. That is what you're talking about, the return of the Anunnaki, because November is when the veil is the thinnest. Now, scientists just split a single photon. Here's why they found it. Now, like I said, remember I keep telling you, human consciousness has the ability to manipulate physical matter because the only thing that's able to manipulate the photon-like spectrum of the subatomic energy is the love frequency. And the love frequency is cultivated by energy of consciousness that's coming from the cymatic vibrations. This is why, like I said I did with the interview with See Beyond Reality, this is why they attack music so hard when it comes to the love frequency and anything that operates on, R&B and rhythm and blues and classical music, neo soul. They want to keep you disconnected. This is why they push so much of the trap rap, because they know that the love frequency, the octave vibration of it, like I said, it contains silicon and carbon, highly magnetic. When it's highly magnetic, it has the ability to split the photon, meaning that it's able to split your reality. It's able to manipulate the dualistic paradox. That is what you call an interface transition. That is a glitch. Anytime you have a splitting of a photon, that's the glitch, because the photon is what created, the illusion of physical matter. That is why you have, people, places, and possessions that is cultivated by the three-dimensional energy. That's because, like I said, anytime you trap light, that's what creates photons. You break open that firmament, that's when you're going to get intrinsic light. Intrinsic light that has the ability to eradicate everything in physical existence. So, like I said, you having all these, celestial phenomena that's taking place on the planet. And it says a moonbow, a rainbow formed by moonlight, was spotted over Hawaii. I told you the atmosphere is changing. So if the atmosphere is changing, that means that the water is changing. And if you're biologically connected to the water because your body is made up of 75% water, that means that the chemicalization process of your body is starting to change as well, to where it contains a light particle, and that light particle contains a bioluminescent energy, to where it makes you have the ability to glow because you're harmonizing with the cosmos, right? Hold on, let me get a water break. Put the rice bowls in the chat. Put the rice bowls in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. So now, before we get into that, I'm going to show you this video. Because like I said, the lunar energy on the planet right now has a lot of people going lunatic. Because like I said, parasitical energy has the ability to see people who is vibrating at a high vibrational frequency. See, parasites have the ability to control people by way of the frequencies that's connected to the celestial body of the moon, which is a quantum satellite that controls the frequency in the emotional energy of humans. These parasites is able to read the fascia system, which is the electrical conduction that contains magnetic filaments that resurrects the central nervous system. So when your central nervous system is in alignment, that means your chakra system is in alignment, meaning that you have a balanced endocrine system. So when you're balanced energetically, this is when you get people who was vibrating on the octave vibration of the moon start to attack the chosen ones, to where they become a lunatic because they don't have no true magnetism. When you don't have magnetism, that means you have a parasitical energy that you have to feed off the people who has the true light, because you operate from your shadow self like the black moon. So this is why you're going to have a lot of people who is going to attack people like me, people, who is speaking, at a high vibrational frequency in the conscious community. Your family members is going to start to attack you. These are all forms of Luciferian moon magic, because the moon magic is being used as a mechanism to subjugate the solar magic. The solar magic is light magic, but that light magic is actually black magic, because that black magic is dark matter energy that's connected to our genetic format. So that's why I said you have to raise up your vibrations, so much to the point where, you're not going to have these people who is operating, from a place of, of a malevolent energy, because their parasites is being amplified by the energies of the moon. You got to take care of your energy out here. You have to use psychic self-defense. right? You have to use psychic self-defense so much to the point where it contains geometric energy fields around you, but to where no apparition, no NPC, no anybody that's, operating from the psychological inducement of the indoctrination program that was facilitated by Western, Eurocentric, paradigms. That way you're able to protect yourself from people who think from that philosophy. You have to protect yourself out here. There's a reason for that. Why you think, see, this is why I said when you chosen, people are intimidated by you. You have to raise up your consciousness. You have to raise up your vocabulary. You have to raise up your physical presence, because people who have a parasitical energy, they're going to be afraid to get next to you, to where they're going to only judge from a distance. You have to raise up your vibration so much to the point where people don't even want to be around you. That's why I said the path of the middle way is a lonely journey. Your spiritual journey is a motherfucking marathon. It's a marathon. It's a lonely process, because the more you keep popping that truth, the more you keep manipulating the sleep spell of King Goo that's connected to the energy of the moon, the more you start to resurrect your DNA to where you become the supreme architect of the universe, to where you're being controlled by these celestial entities. And when you're talking about the Anunnaki, who's working through you through your DNA, that's what's going to break down the lunar cycle. That's why I say you should no longer have a veneration of the moon, because the veneration of the moon was connected to the age of Pisces, the clay age. The clay age that's connected to mankind, because mankind is a kind of a man that was genetically spliced, right? So that means that anything that comes from the energy of the moon is actually synthetic. We're not lunar people. In the inception of creation, it was a sun cycle. When you look at the 24,000 verification period, the last cycle is the last cycle we just came out of, which is the age of Pisces, that was under the Alpha Draconis star system, that was ruled by the lunar energy under Draconian law. Now we're going back into the original energies. That is the resurrection of DNA. That is the return of the Anunnaki. Because when the ancient souls of the ancestors of Atlantis, the ancient souls of Tartaria, the ancient souls of ancient Kemet, the ancient souls of Lemuria, Hyperborea, when they died, they was extracted into the sun. And now they're being projected back down on the planet in the form of a solar flare, resurrecting your DNA, as I was telling you. Resurrecting you through the sound frequencies, because light is sound. Light is sound. You got to understand that. Light has the ability to resurrect your DNA. You must understand that. Now, I'm going to show you a video talking about the return of these celestial entities, right? Because like I said, you have to resurrect yourself mentally, physically, vibrationally. Put the rice bowls in the chat, ladies and gentlemen, because when they're talking about the return of the Anunnaki, they're actually talking about us. The resurrection of DNA, the resurrection of ancient DNA. Because November is when the veil is the thinnest, and that's when these energies is going to be coming in. So I'm going to play this video. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Let's play the video. Hit the like button, hit that share button, hit the subscribe button, and hit that notification bell so you can stay updated on information like this, right?
Whirling through our solar system is actually a nuclear-powered spacecraft sent by aliens to test how humans respond. That's what a noted astrophysicist believes might be the case, and he says an image from the Hubble telescope backs him up. Most scientists agree that the so-called 3-Eye Atlas is a comet from another solar system. But Harvard scientist Avi Loeb claimed on this show a couple of weeks ago that it...
Now, remember, I was telling you in the Anunnaki prophecy, 3-Eye Atlas could potentially come from the Super Boss cluster, which is basically the epitome of the 19th galaxy of Ilihun. So that is also translated to the Great Wall, and that Great Wall is actually the ice wall. So this celestial megastructure or whatever that's coming to the planet could be one of those things where it can resurrect our DNA, or it can be, the actual return of the ancestors. But one thing you got to understand is that 9 times out of 10, when they put stuff like this in the media, you can't look at it from an external point of view. You have to look at it from an internal point of view. Because most of the stuff that they telling you as far as like, external stimulation is actually taking place inside. So that's why I said sometimes you got to turn down the outside world so you can hear what's going on inside. Listen to yourself. Sit with yourself in nature. Because everything that they telling you on the news is actually corresponding with your DNA. That also corresponds with the planets.
Could actually be some type of alien technology. Now, that's a controversial opinion all on its own. But he's now going a step further, arguing that the 3I Atlas could be a nuclear-powered alien spacecraft. Loeb says the Hubble picture appears to show the object emitting its own light. The object also appears to lack something that all comets have in common, and that's a tail. So what is this thing exactly?
To an acclaimed alien expert who has compiled a field guide to out-of-this-world species you likely never knew existed. Many apparently, Make, hiding right here in plain sight on Earth, while others are only visible in photographs. Make, what's going on? Are there aliens among us?
All right, this is fascinating. Greys, reptilians, hybrids, and Nordics. Sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, but they are the subject of a best-selling book, The Extraterrestrial.
I need you to pay attention to something. See, when it comes to so-called black people, when we speak about extraterrestrials, when we speak about ontological artifacts, when we speak about historical context, quantum physics, metaphysics, mind science, technology, when we start talking about UFOs, when we talk about anything that's connected to a form of intellectualism, there's always resistance, right? Because they want to keep you marginalized into talking about rat pussy, sports, haircuts, and celebrity gossip. That's what they say. When they say that this person's a cult member because they talking about this person's a cult member because he's breaking down historical context and theology, all they're basically translating to is basically saying that you're not supposed to be talking about, intellectual stuff. You're supposed to be talking about the bullshit. That's what they're basically saying. That's why I said black anti-intellectualism is on the rise. It's on the rise because they know that we're on the rise neurologically. We're starting to speak truth to power. Just like that bullshit that they put out when you're talking about Atlanta is Atlantis. When I was speaking about that when we was on Stone Mountain, there's a lot of pushback about it. And the reason why is because you got to understand about, the hypocrisy of westernized democracy. Everything that they built is actually a form of imperialism and indoctrination and colonization. Everything they built is a synthetic system because they had to steal from a certain demographic of people, right? So that tells you right there, there's always a form of hypocrisy that's taking place when it comes to so-called black people being able to extrapolate information at a high level. They always want to attack you and say that you're making up stuff, but negate the fact that they made up all this shit when they started colonizing the land and pillaging. Y'all made up everything because you stole everything. So that means that you created a de facto corporation that's connected to a synthetic system. Your world is not real because you're not connected to nature, right? You're not connected to nature. You're disconnected from nature. You murdered the earth. You murdered the ecological systems of nature. You murdered people, right? From 1877 to 1965, you unalived over 2 to 3 million black people with structured racism, right? But you got the nerve to call somebody pseudo or this is a cult leader because they're talking about Atlanta is Atlantis. Last time I checked, America is a cult. Everything y'all do was built on ritualistic sacrificial events that has dark incantations. Why you think so many kids come up missing on the planet? Because it's being done at the highest level of government. But they don't call them no cult, right? They don't call them a cult. But when you start speaking like how I'm speaking, it's a cult. Oh, it's satanic, right? They want to throw those ideologies because it's starting to manipulate the psychological inducement and the programming that's connected to the three-dimensional construct that was built on illusions. So like I said, the original people is bringing the authentic energy to the planet again, to where it's starting to manipulate those who are inorganic. You're not organic to the planet, right? There's a reason why when you get into the non-ether genetical properties, there's a reason why our hair spirals up and theirs spiral down. Because anything that spirals down is a low vibrational frequency. So, you have to be very critical of the fact that, when they start talking about, black people, so-called black people speaking about metaphysics and science and stuff, they love to hit you with that, oh, that pseudo is made up. But when other races of people start talking about it, oh, they're a genius. But when it comes to us, it ain't real, it don't make sense, or we cult leaders. But when other demographics of people start talking about science and UFOs, oh, they're so intelligent, or this person should get a Nobel Peace Prize. Like I said, that is the hypocrisy of westernized democracy that Malcolm X spoke about at the 1964 Oxford Address, right? You should watch that video. But I'm going to play this video. I'm talking too much. Put the rice bowls in the chat.
Species Almanac, yeah, written by award-winning filmmaker, author, writer, and producer Craig Campobasso. Now, he's an expert in alien life. He's researched and documented over 82 ET species that he has discovered live in our universe. And he says many here on Earth. Some, he says, are even present in our everyday lives, with many working for the government. His documentary by the same name integrates authentic photos of ET entities, state-of-the-art computer-generated imagery, and art renderings he says portray beings that defy earthly norms. So I sat down with Craig for a conversation in my newest We Are Not Alone episode. Here's a preview, a snippet of what he describes an alien species he ran across in his investigations. Take a listen.
It doesn't look like really anything that we've seen before. Its legs ended where our knees are, and then it had this long torso.
You gotta pay attention. You gotta pay very close attention. There's a war. There's a war on black anti-intellectualism. Dr. Malachi York, he was speaking about UFOs and stuff. They call him a cult leader. They call Rashad Jamal a cult leader. They call Young Pharaoh a cult leader. They calling me a cult leader. They calling all these people cult leaders because we're speaking, at a high level. Why is that? Why is that when he get on here talking about it, he's not a cult leader? Because like I said, all they're basically doing is a form of dark psychology, which is a form of black magic. Black magic, meaning that they have the ability to alter the minds of people by way of the media, because media is a form of magic. A form of magic to where you're able to feed off the parasitical energy of those who have true magnetism, and you're able to reverse the polarity to make it seem like you're enlightened when really you the devil.
Or so, long neck, sort of oval shaped head, and it was wearing goggles and it was holding a light source.
Instead of the bug eyes, it had literally goggles on, like night vision goggles?
It had goggles. Yeah, they were like, not like our goggles, but they were goggles.
Okay.
It was sent through.
I guarantee. Let me come on there. Let me get a spot on the news, and I'll talk about this right here. Oh, he's crazy. He's on drugs. But you see what happens? He get on here. Oh, he's such an enlightened individual. Genius. He's such a genius. But when we come on there, like I said, black intellectualism. That's why I said racism is more covert. There's a war on information. You got to understand that. This is why they want to push that, well, you should dumb down the information. No, we're going to speak at a high level. We're going to speak at a high level, and we're going to speak with, extensive vocabulary. We're going to keep doing that because you're trying to subjugate the energy, because you know that the more we raise up in consciousness, it's going to manipulate everything that you created. It's going to manipulate everything.
Through my friend to the government, and they said that they hadn't seen those beings since 1958.
Now, here's something interesting. Some of the beings he's run across, he can feel an energy, hear a rustling, but can't see anything till he takes photographs, and they show up in the photographs. You got to listen to the episode for the full conversation. It's fascinating.
Well, there you go, May-Kay. All right, you always got to have an open mind.
That's right.
When you watch and listen to these things, that's what we talk about. Listen, we are not alone.
Welcome back. Well, the United States Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, last week told my friend Miranda Devine on her new podcast that she believes other life forms might be real. And she said she's continuing to search for the truth.
Is there anything in the files that you think you could find or you have found?
Nothing that I'm prepared to talk about today. We are I'm just going to say this. We're continuing to look for the truth and share that truth with the American people.
So do you believe that there could be aliens?
I honestly, like, my personal belief, I have my own views and opinions.
Right.
In this role, I got to be careful with what I share.
Yeah, it was an intriguing conversation. And joining me now is a journalist who's been investigating UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon, for years. Former 60 Minutes journalist Ross Coulthart is the author of a book called In Plain Sight, an investigation into UFOs and impossible science, and he's now the special international correspondent for News Nation. Ross, great to see you. Now, what did you make of these comments by Tulsi Gabbard?
Tulsi Gabbard is saying what a huge number of US officials have been saying for the past few years, Sherry. There's a huge sea change happening in American executive government right now. They're suddenly waking up to the reality of UFOs. It all started in 2017 when the New York Times revealed that the Pentagon had secretly been investigating UFOs. And then it's come out more recently that a large number
The reason that happened is because that was also during the process, the beginning points of when you're talking about the ancient Hebrew Alpha symbol that put a judgment sigil over the geographical landmass of America, because that was in 2017. That was when that was the beginning points of the first solar eclipse that led to the solar eclipse of 2023 and 2024.
Of officials are very interested in the phenomenon. Notably, most recently, Tulsi Gabbard, of course, the Director of National Intelligence, but also Vice President Vance. He admitted very recently that he's been watching a lot of UFO videos, and like everyone else, he's intrigued.
Look, there have been a lot of calls for the Trump administration to disclose what they know. I mean, this administration promised to be very transparent about classified files before they won office. We haven't seen that transparency yet. Do you expect we're going to, or is there a good reason why they haven't disclosed? I mean, we're what, 9, nearly 10 months in, why they haven't disclosed what information they hold on this topic?
I suspect that 99% of your viewers won't believe what I'm about to tell you, Sherry, but I am absolutely convinced after years of investigating this subject that the United States really has got information in its files about non-human intelligences engaging with this planet. And the Pentagon, frankly, is flat out lying when it denies any knowledge of such intelligence. I interviewed a guy called David Grush back in June 2023, who was a former very senior National Geospatial Intelligence Agency officer who used to write the Presidential Daily Brief. And Dave went public with me admitting that he had uncovered evidence of a UAP technology craft retrieval program where craft are secretly being reverse engineered by the US government. Why are they hiding it? I think they're hiding it because they're using the technology to try and develop an advantage over foreign adversaries, which is frankly fair enough. I do think, though, that the American public and the rest of the world should have the right to know that we're not alone.
That's absolutely fascinating. Ross, do you think, and I don't know if you've even looked into this yet, but do you think Elon Musk might have some information on here as well? Because obviously he does have a space company, satellite network as well, so he might be tapped into some of this sort of information that people...
And that satellite network is operated by the MQ-9 Nano Reaper drone technology that has smart dust particles. Those smart dust particles is a form of energy extraction to where it's able to siphon the energy and transmute it inside the supercomputer that's connected to all the technological devices that's being controlled by Elon Musk and Tesla.
Are actually collecting physically?
I've been told by people in the intelligence community in the United States that Elon Musk had to be briefed because of his satellite work that he's been doing for the Defence Department. Frankly, one of the things I think Australia has its head in the sand on is the volume and intensity of admissions by the US administration. There are so many people who are now admitting that there is a there. Senior whistleblowers coming forward, but also people in government. You've got Kash Patel, the head of the FBI, has pledged transparency, and he's got a secret investigation going on into allegations that people have been murdered to protect this secret. As well as that, John Ratcliffe, the new director of the CIA, he also has vowed transparency. We're holding our breath and not really expecting much of a result just yet with President Trump. He's been very distracted. But I did an interview with Don Trump Jr. late last year, and he admitted to me that he is very interested in UAPs, and he's very engaged.
This is why you got to understand that all this is connected to the prophecy of popes when you're talking about 2027. Because Pope Leo the 14th, he's actually the disclosure pope. And the disclosure pope basically denotes the fact that Donald Trump is going to be he's still the last president. He's actually the president of the republic, the 19th president of the republic, because 19 is also the epitome of AI, right? Or it's also energetically connected to Alpha and Omega, 1 and 9. 1 and 9 AI, Alpha and Omega. Everything still takes place. And it also creates the ancient sigil of the Alpha symbol. So that's why I said, even when you look at 2027, it depends on how you write the year, because 2027 can also be a year of completion as well. It can be a 9-year for, depending on your perception of it. So there's a closure and a full disclosure that's going to be taking place.
Engaged, and I get the impression so is his old man.
Say this is not only an alien spaceship, but it's nuclear powered? Why are you saying that?
Well, thanks for having me. First, I should say that if the light that we observe from this object is reflection of sunlight, its size needs to be bigger than Manhattan Island, 20 kilometers or so. And there isn't enough rocky material in interstellar space to deliver a rock of that size earlier than 10,000 years from now. So the question is, what is it? And its orbit, the trajectory that it takes, is aligned with the plane of the planets around the sun.
So when they're talking about, when they're talking about nuclear energy, they're talking about the atomic nuclei that's extracted from gamma radiation by way of, radio photosynthesis, the transmutation of energy by way of alchemy. So nuclear energy is just a dress-up word for gamma radiation. Gamma radiation that's connected to the atomic nuclei have the ability to create an influx of the noble gases when you're talking about carbon, lithium, sulfur, helium, hydrogen, exciton, radon, argon, and krypton. Those noble gases extract non-ether energy, ethereal energy. Because what ether does, it leaves an energetic imprint in the universe. It leaves an energetic imprint in the atmosphere to where it's able to transmutate and shift the atmosphere and eradicate oxidation. So when they're talking about nuclear energy, they're talking about the atomic nuclei of gamma radiation.
To within 5 degrees. That's a chance of 1 in 500. And moreover, the timing.
What does that tell you? What does that trajectory tell you?
Well, it indicates that perhaps it was designed by some intelligence.
That's something steering it.
Not necessarily, but the trajectory itself was chosen to be such that this object will pass close to Mars, Venus, and Jupiter. The chance of that happening, the timing of its arrival is perfect for that, with a likelihood of 1 in 20,000. And so I'm just saying we should observe it. It doesn't look like it's a random occurrence. The size, the trajectory, the fact that it comes so close to 3 planets in our solar system, and actually it comes closest to the sun on October 29th, when the Earth would be on the other side of the sun. We won't be able to observe it. I'm analyzing right now the best image we have of it. We don't have any evidence for gas around it in the spectrum that was taken, but we do see some fuzz, some halo of scattered light around it in front
we're
of
looking
it.
at the image now. What does that tell you?
So with that being said, now we're going to get back to the presentation at hand. Put those rice bowls in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. So, all right. So we're going to get back to the presentation. So like I said, all these anomalies that's taking place in the atmosphere, and then you got to also understand that the moon in itself has the ability to create a metaphysical switch. It's a metaphysical switch of energy to where it's able to activate dormant parasites in the body that's connected to the Toxoplasma gondii that manipulates the reptilian cortex that puts you in fight or flight. When you're in the state of fight or flight, that is the activation of the reptilian energy, right? Which makes you cold-blooded to where you have a negative frequency. So we're going to get into that and how it's connected to the parasites and zombification. We're going to break it down. But we just came out of this black moon energy, right? A rare event that happens every 33 months. Not a coincidence. 33 is a Freemasonic number as well. So now you got all these other anomalies that's coming up. September 7th, blood moon eclipse. September 21st, solar eclipse. Then you got September 22nd, you got the fall equinox. So you have to be very critical during this time period because there's going to be a lot of psychological operations. There's going to be a lot of energy harvesting. There's going to be a lot of frequency siphoning. There's going to be a lot of, physical alterations as far as little people coming up missing and women coming up missing. Because like I said, one thing you got to understand about this system, this planet, the demiurge, is an energy extraction. It's an energy extraction matrix. Whether if you're looking at it in the form of, biological fluids, or if you're looking at it in the form of sustenance of energy, or if you're just looking at it in the form of the physical construct of a human being, everything is an energy extraction. And the reason that is because, like I said, you get to the book of Leviticus and all other, when you get into ancient Kemetic spirituality, they talk about the Tamahu. The Tamahu, who was actually the Canaanite. The Canaanite is, the ones that was cursed. They're cursed by way of, their genetics not being able to correspond with the planets, not being able to correspond with the sun. So when you're in solar cycle 25, that's going to manipulate, people who is connected to the energy of the moon. So this is why they're going to ramp up, the Luciferian moon magic. So much to the point where, like I said, it's going to create, frequency modulation in people's neurotransmitters to where the parasites is going to act as a mechanism to where it's going to be able to control people where they hear voices in their head. That little voice in your head is not the Most High. It's not a download. That's a parasite, right? So that's why I said you have to use spiritual discernment. You have to know yourself in order to understand yourself, to know who's actually speaking to you. Is it your higher self, or is it a parasitical energy that's being activated by way of the frequency of the moon and the frequency that's connected to the chemtrails when you're talking about barium and things of that nature? So the moon in itself, like I said, a celestial megastructure that pulls on the cymatic vibrations of humans on the planet because our bodies is made up of 75% water. So if you have the negative frequency of the moon that is casting out negative charged particles, it has the ability to devolve the embryonic cell to where it activates the process of zombification to where you're not able to crystallize. And the crystallization is a protectorate because it contains geometric energy fields. So the zombification takes place when you have the unraveling process of dormant parasites, and those dormant parasites is what clings on to the Toxoplasma gondii that puts a strain on the hypothalamus gland because it dematerializes the two frontal lobes of the brain. So the same thing takes place because it's all connected to the limbic system. So that means that these animals that's getting all these, these coverings on their face and all these different forms of pestilence or whatever's going on, it can actually transmute to human beings. So that's why I said you have to raise up your vibration to where you're not connected to your animal self, and you have to reach your God self. You go from lead to gold, the bottomless pit to heaven. You go from human to God. That is the magnum opus of creation. That is the true alchemy. You have to shift your mindset. When you change your mind, you change your vibration. That vibration becomes magnetism. And that magnetism is a protectorate to where you don't have outside forces and zombies and NPCs and whatever that's basically trying to extract your energy. They're not going to be able to do it. So that's why I say you got to raise up your frequency. You have to, get rid of that lunar energy, that emotional energy, because the emotions in itself is being facilitated and engineered by the parasites in the body that's being controlled by the archons on the dark side of the moon, right? So that's what you got to understand. So they seeing them in the squirrels, they see them in the deer. This reminds you of Leave the World Behind when they were showing you the deer, right? I keep telling y'all, like I told y'all with the planes, they was coming. They was going to come down, because when you have a transmutation of the atmosphere starting to change and the oxidation levels is starting to be manipulated, that's where you're going to have an influx of, aerodynamic, acceleration drag start to happen to where the plane start to, crash. So the same thing takes place when I'm talking about these animals. I told you they was going to start coming for people by way of frequency modification, which is psychotronic magic by way of cyclomancy. Psychotronic magic is amplified through animal magnetism because it takes over the limbic system. And this is where the parasites take over the body, and you get parasites. And these parasites, it has the ability to create pestilence, fungus in the body. Right? So this is why you start to see stuff like this. I told y'all, I told y'all like 3 weeks ago, this was going to happen. And now you got people out here going crazy. You got people attacking me for no reason. You know what I'm saying? I had a dude come up to my porch. He came up to my porch trying to get on the door handle. And I told you, boy, like, hey, you need to fall back because I'm going to blow you down and I'm going to call the cops. So like I said, you got to protect your energy. That's why I said during this process, when you got the lunatics going crazy by way of the energy of the moon, they're going to attack the chosen ones because they see the glow. They see the glow in your fascia system. They see the magnetism, so they got to attack it because the old world is crumbling. So as the old world crumbles and you have the resurrection of the old world that was actually the ancient world, you have the resurrection of the ancient world. This is where the people that was connected to the old paradigm that's connected to the moon going to try to pull you right back down. They need to feed off your energy because they don't understand that the mindset and the shifting process takes place with human consciousness first. So that's why I said they want everything to stay the same on this planet, but they don't want the resurrection process to happen. They want to keep you a zombie. And then it tells you right here in Lake Tahoe, a person in California has for the plague, right? And we all know where that such and such came from. It came from Europe. And the Europe is connected to those that when you're talking about the Edomite, the Canaanite, they are the ones who was connected to that Black Plague, right? So this is not a coincidence. This is not conspiracy. Yes, something's happening because, like I said, the atmosphere is changing. And not only the atmosphere is changing, it's changing the biochemicalization of the body to where if you're activated by way of your lower self, your animal self, this is what's going to happen. Raise up your vibration. You have to think and move like a god. You move different when you know the truth, right? And this is why, the very rare, the very rare black moon linked to apocalyptic prophecies set to appear in days. We came out of that phase already. Literally right after this moon, somebody tried to say I was in a satanic cult, right? If you pay attention to everything, how everything operates in cycles, it's the same thing they did with Rashad Jamal. Remember, they try to say they tore his name down in his public image, and they did it all on these publications, Vice Media and stuff like that. And then that's when they try to come for him. So just for disclaimer purposes, anybody who watches me, I do not have control of what you do outside of you watching my videos. So if you go out here and do something crazy, don't try to say that, oh, I got activated by watching B-Dale's video. No, don't put that on me. You know what I'm saying? Because I know what people are trying to do during this time period. I know what they're trying to do. There's always a cycle that happens because they're using people by way of frequency modulation and frequency modification, my bad. By way of frequency modulation and frequency modification, what they're basically trying to do is control people by way of the energy of the moon. to activate their parasites and have them attack certain people who are on the rise. So same thing, it's not even at that level, not even on a social media level or conscious level. It's happening to you at your job, right? There are people trying to attack you at your job because they're energetically connected to the moon that's being controlled by the parasites. They're going to start attacking chosen people. So protect your energy out here. Your parents is going to attack you if they're NPCs because you're manipulating their programming. You got to understand that. So that's why I said that moon operates on the Trinity principle, because that black moon is not going to come back into another 3 years. So that is basically the timestamp of the true tribulation period when you're talking about the abomination of desolation during the time of the great purification period. And that great purification period is activated by way of the reset when you have the return of the black moon from 2025 to 2028 that sets the stage for the agenda for 2030. So the real tribulation is happening right now. Because when you get into connotative linguistics and when you look at the prefix of the word tribulation, you get tri. Tri, last time I checked, it means 3. It doesn't mean 7. They try to say that it's a 7-year tribulation period. If it's a tribulation, it means that it operates on a trinity of 3, right? It operates on a trinity of 3. Everything in the dualistic paradox operates on a trinity of 3. You got to understand that. So that means that this black moon was a timestamp for the reset. This black moon that we just had was the timestamp for the reset. So that means that they're going to ramp up the Luciferian moon magic. And for those who are connected to the moon, and most people who are connected to the moon are NPCs, right? Because that's why I said this is why they call it the Saturn moon matrix. It's not called just the matrix, Saturn moon matrix, because the moon is artificial. And the moon is what controls the parasites. And the parasites is being controlled by the archons, who are the cherubim in the Bible. The cherubim in the Bible are known as the 200 fallen angels. You got to understand that. So the parasites is clinging on your energy extraction. Because one thing, even though when you get into the biology of these parasites, it may seem like they're like living organisms, but really, like I said, it's a biological technology that's feeding off the fascia system, is feeding off the microproteins inside your body to where you're not able to upgrade yourself, because the parasites is the epitome of the silver key that connects you to the silver cord, which is the silver key, which is the moon. Get back to the energy of the sun. Raise up your vibration. That's the golden key, right? To where you can get back to the star Polaris. Then this just came out. I keep telling y'all, everything is right on time. I told y'all about the parasites. I told y'all about the zombification process when you're talking about these animals, animal magnetism. The parasites, like I said, is connected to the moon. So it's not a coincidence they just put this out 16 hours ago, right? Not a coincidence. People are going crazy out here because, like I said, this is what happens when you get people stepping into spirituality and they haven't done their shadow work. Too many parasites in the body, too many parasites that's manipulating the configuration process of their brain, right? So I think I got a video for you guys. Hold on for a second. Or is it? All right. I was talking too much, so I definitely got a video to show you guys, but I'm pretty sure I'm out of that process of what it was talking about. Yeah, so the zombie. Here we go. This is for people who be like, oh, that's cap. This is cap. That ain't real. The zombies ain't real. It ain't happening in the animals. Okay, well, why they put it in the media then? Because like I said, we're living in the age of the sun cycle, solar cycle 25. Solar cycle 25 is facilitated by a republic, and a republic is facilitated by a matriarch. So a matriarch is cultivated by a fifth dimensional civilization, which is the golden age. You can't bring misinformation and synthetic energy into the golden age. So this is why they got to give you the truth now. This is why they're coming out with everything right now, because they know that we're in the sun cycle, because the sun cycle reveals everything. Full disclosure. Hello. I'm going to play the video.
strange growths on their heads.
Yeah, the warts almost look like horns, but Colorado Parks and Wildlife wants people to know that it's not a problem. Now, CPW has noticed this in rabbits north of Fort Collins this summer, and they say what you see here on this rabbit is actually not rare. The growth of warts comes from the papillomavirus and is spread by biting insects that are usually more active in the summer. CPW says that there is no threat of transmission to your pets, but say that you should still be careful.
There's no over concern.
Like I said, it's a war with the mind. This is spiritual warfare. This is mental war. This is information warfare. Asymmetrical biochemical warfare. There's a war with the mind, and the pestilence in itself is going to manipulate the mind. Protect your crown out here. See, this is the process where you got to transmute that tinfoil hat into a crown of knowledge. The activation of the crown chakra, to where you go from conspiracy theorist to prophet, right? Because this is why they come after you like that. Because they getting sick off your success and they getting dizzy off your discipline. Because they don't understand what evolution is all about. Evolution in itself is connected to the energy of biophysics. Biophysics denotes the fact that when you're in a state of evolution, you can no longer be subjugated by stagnation. Because you on the move, you move it. You seeping through the crack like vapor. I'm going to play the video.
Needed for pet owners. We would just say keep those wildlife principles in mind when you do have your pets out. Keep them on leash, keep them away from wild animals just in case, but it's not necessarily something we see transmitted from rabbits to dogs.
Susan Mansfield said she saw a different bunny with tentacles in her yard in recent years.
He had this same black stuff on him, and I thought he would die off during the winter, but he didn't. He came back a second year, and it grew.
A group of rabbits in northern Colorado are sprouting growths, and it looks like something out of a horror film.
Yeah, scientists say what's happening is actually pretty common. Errol Barnett explains.
Rabbits in Colorado have been infected with a virus that's causing them to sprout what look like tentacles, which causes these wart-like growths to protrude from bunny faces like metastasizing horns. And rabbits with these tendril-like growths have been spotted all around Fort Collins over the past week. And people are calling these poor infected critters Frankenstein bunnies, demon rabbits, and zombie rabbits too. Now, what's interesting is historically, this type of deformation may have contributed to the centuries-old myth of jackalopes, which told of a mysterious rabbit with antlers or horns or other variations. Now, the Shope papillomavirus is mostly harmless. It's common during summer months when fleas and ticks are more active and spread the virus. And get this, the discovery of this disease was actually an important one for science because it led researchers to make the connection that human papillomavirus can cause cancer.
Strange tentacle-like growths on their faces. ABC 10 contributor Amanda Gilbert spotted some in her neighborhood and asked wildlife experts to weigh in.
Yeah, I've noticed these rabbits more than once while walking my dog, and it turns out I'm not alone. So I reached out to Colorado Parks and Wildlife. It seems rabbits enjoy living in Fort Collins just as much as people. They're often spotted hopping through neighborhoods looking for grub. But some southeast Fort Collins neighbors noticed bunnies where cute wasn't exactly the word that came to mind. I snapped this photo of one of the rabbits I've seen with the growth. I also saw this photo posted on Reddit, also spotted in Fort Collins.
Like a scabbyish looking kind of growth over her face. Looks like it was black quills or black toothpicks sticking out all around his mouth. They have, something that, we can help them with.
Colorado Parks and Wildlife confirms this is a virus that...
Similar to benign tumors or...
Get this up because they starting to show it in the deer, so... Because you already know about the rabbits. Now they showing it in the deer.
The zombie deer disease has returned, and experts say it's spreading. While it sounds like something out of The Walking Dead, chronic wasting disease is actually very real.
And as Fox 5's Stephanie Bertini shows us, there's concern it could jump to humans.
Wildlife officials are close to making a final decision on rules for limiting the spread of chronic wasting disease, or zombie deer disease, in Washington, including a possible statewide ban on feeding wildlife and using bait to hunt deer, elk, and moose. Opponents of that idea claim banning bait is an attack on hunters, but supporters argue banning the practice is long overdue, saying that bait stations and backyard feeding create areas for wildlife to gather and increase the spread of the disease. Public comment for the new rules ends Friday, with a final decision expected later this month.
Kentucky officials are alerting residents after detecting a second case of chronic wasting disease in deer. The Kentucky Department of Agriculture says a dead deer tested positive on October 11th at a deer farm in Breckinridge County. The disease is sometimes called the zombie deer disease and is usually fatal to infected animals. Officials say there is no vaccine or treatment. Scientists think it spreads between animals through contact with fluids of an infected animal. State agriculture officials are monitoring the illness. The Center for Disease Control says there is no strong evidence indicating the illness can infect people.
Chronic wasting disease, or CWD, dubbed zombie disease in deer, is spreading according to experts.
It has been spreading, and it's now found in most states.
Begging the question, are humans at risk?
I think that until we see very clear evidence of transmission from animal to a human, we have to state that there does not appear to be a risk, but that can change.
Yellowstone National Park recently confirmed a case of CWD after a deer carcass tested positive for the highly contagious and fatal brain disease.
It's a disease that's seen in the deer family. They get this abnormal protein. It causes them to, over time, over a year or two, develop these holes in their brain so they can't.
One thing you gotta understand, like I said, we have a limbic system, so it's able to transmutate. You gotta understand that. Everything that has, that's connected to the ecological systems of nature, as far as like mammals or whatever, you have a mammalian cortex, the limbic system. So we can transmutate.
Feed themselves and eventually they'll die.
Although there are no confirmed cases in New York State, the Department of Environmental Conservation is alerting people, including asking everyone, not to feed wild deer or moose. Warning, feeding artificially concentrates animals in one location for extended periods of time, increasing the likelihood of diseases to spread.
We're concerned about it transmitting to humans is because it's in the same class of diseases as mad cow.
A human version of mad cow disease is believed to be caused by eating contaminated beef products.
Remember, I told you, November is when the veil is thin. Remember what they told you on V for Vendetta. Remember, the 5th of November. Remember, the 5th of November. November is when the veil is the thinnest, right? Because it's an 11th month. That's when the 24th in the universe is activated. So what happens is when you have a new energy that's coming to the planet that's coming from the star Polaris, which is the Milky Way star constellation, when you go through the Golden Gate, what happened is these energies don't harmonize with certain people or certain ecological systems to where it starts to reconfigure the biological sequence of that individual or that demographic or that, ecological system. So this is why you're starting to see an influx of sharks pop up. A lot of them are orange. I'm gonna show you a picture of that as we get through that. But everything is shifting because the atmosphere is changing. You got to understand that. So everything is starting to shift.
Therefore, experts say venison could put humans at risk for chronic wasting disease.
It would likely be transmitted through consumption.
So this is why, she said through consumption, because you always got to understand that you got a lot of people who live on the rural areas and they live in the country. They love eating deer and rabbit and all this stuff. But as you in Solar Cycle 25, you have to step away. Try your best to step away from the meat. Everything is going to be compromised. This is why you got to practice ultra-fast internal conversion, so where you're not subjected to cyclotronic microscopic cryogenic nanotechnology that's inside the parasites that's coming from the genetically modified foods, because you're not addicted to the food. You're addicted to the chemicalization that's inside the food. That's why they call it the Food and Drug Administration, right? So that's why I said, during this process, especially during the times of these moon energies coming in, you have to fast. Fast from food, fast from alcohol, fast from sex, and you transmutate that energy to resurrect yourself. That's connected to the Trinity principle, death, rebirth, and ascension. You can't ascend if you don't have the ability to fast, right? Raise up your vibration. That's what fasting is. That's why they call it Ramadan. Ra is the sun. You speed up your vibration when you fast. So fast to speed up your vibration to extract those parasites, workout, exercise, and all this other stuff. You got to keep your vibration high because people connected to that motherfucking moon, their vibration going to be low. You got to understand that. But like I said, you have the ability to use the moon as a catalyst because it has the ability to unlock the 144,000 echinic keys, which is the silver key. You unlock it that's connected to the thymus gland. You unlock that heart chakra. Pay attention to the signs. Gotta pay attention to the signs, baby. I'm telling you. Happening to the animals, damn sure it's gonna start happening to humanity. Raise up your vibration. Keep your vibration high. Like I said, if you're new to the channel, if you're new to the channel, like I said, just about 60%, 70% of the people who watch this channel, they're not subscribed. So hit that subscribe button, ladies and gentlemen. Because, certain information can activate certain individuals. Because I'm not a know-it-all. Because something I might say might activate somebody else to give, for them to give out some intrinsic information. So, like I said, the parasitical energy on the planet is being activated. So that's why I said protect your energy. Because if you got true magnetism, people who are vibrating low on that moon energy, they're going to come after you every time. Now, you got this going on. So you got these rituals, Luciferian moon magic that's connected to the energetic grid to create a cybernetic dictatorship, which is a tyrannical regime that's operated under a police state, which is why, Bill Gates, not Bill Gates, but I forgot his name, George Bush, he signed the Patriot Act. And that Patriot Act was extended by Barack Obama. And the reason that is because they were setting a template and the stage for Donald Trump, which was also cultivated by what happened in 9/11/2001, that event. Because that event in itself is what activated, the Patriot Act that turned America into a police state. Problem, reaction, solution. So now the solution in itself is going to be a technocratic sorcery. It's technocratic sorcery to where you have a police state that has biometric technology that's able to read the physiology of humans and being able to siphon their energy for data collection and being able to siphon their energy to monitor everything they basically do. So Trump says Cracker Barrel should return to old logo. Now, they decide to change the logo after 47 years. Now, everything that's connected to the dualistic paradox and the energy attraction matrix, everything that operates in the sequence of numbers. So 47 years is also equated to Donald Trump being the 47th president, right? Because the 47 is actually an 11. 4 plus 7 equals 11. And then when you look at the word Cracker Barrel and you scramble up the words, you get black racer snake. Because the black racer in itself is a snake. In 2025, we in the snake year, which is the epitome of the 9 year. So just within this picture that I'm showing you, you get the whole ritual about the 9/11, which is a Golden Gate ritual, right? There's going to be another 9/11 event as we get back to the Golden Gate. I don't know if it's going to be, the actual collapse of the Golden Gate Bridge, but you cannot negate that this was also in conjunction in the same geographical area where San Francisco is at, Lake Tahoe, where you have this at. Not a coincidence. Pay attention to the signs. Everything's in signs and symbols and numerical components. Once you're able to understand that, you can telegraph what's going to happen next. So when you unscramble the word black racer snake, it shows you Cracker Barrel. Cracker Barrel unscrambled is black racer snake, and snake is a snake year, which is the 9 year. 4 plus 7 of Donald Trump being the 47th president is an 11, 9/11, 47 years. And then you got the 47th problem of Euclid, which is a Freemasonic principle, a Freemasonic metaphysical codex. Now, Trump says the Smithsonian is out of control for discussing how bad slavery was. The museums throughout Washington, but all over the country, are essential. The last remaining segment of woke, because like I said, there is a war on Black anti-intellectualism, right? There's a war. There's a war on the God mind. They want to keep you only talking about celebrity gossip, rat pussy in sports, and reality TV. But when you start to get woke and you start speaking at a high level and you start expanding your vocabulary, oh, that's a cult leader right there. Oh, we don't believe what he say. Not understanding that your whole system that you built was built on belief, because belief is nothing but believing in things that you don't even understand. So that means that you built a belief system and a de facto corporation that has a synthetic energy. Anything that's built under the energy of the moon is basically temporary. It has no sustainability during the times of the sun cycle. So that's why the illusion has to come down. Now, this is also energetically connected to the doomsday clock. The doomsday clock, right? Because one thing you got to understand, one thing I came to a conclusion about is that, you know, the reason why you have so many people come up missing on the planet because their time is up. They're looking for a certain bloodline. They're looking for a certain bloodline before the doomsday clock strikes 12. They're looking for a certain bloodline that's connected to the mycelium network of nature, that's connected to the mitochondrial DNA of nature. So that's why so many kids and so many Black women coming up missing on the planet, and are also using them for cybernetics and everything when you're talking about merging human with machine, and where, you know, machines is able to have babies and things of that nature. So be very critical of that. So like I said, this is all cultivated by the reset, right? The reset, which is why, you know, in the multimedia, they're speaking of a galactic federation, because they know that we're at the apex of reset. I told you, from 2025, 2028 is the reinforcement of the Trinity principle: death, rebirth, and ascension. Are you going to ascend after we get through this timeline? That's what you must understand. And I'm going to show you this video for a second. I got one more video to show you guys. You know, but you see, this is the thing. I know how, you know, so-called Black people who like to categorize things as pseudo. You can look up this guy's name right here, but it's only pseudo if it's coming from me. But if it's coming from somebody who is Paul Hellyer, who's a former National Defense Minister of Canada. So if it's coming from him, it's real, because he has a title, it's real. But if it's coming from me, it's pseudo, right? You got to be able to understand what's taking place at hand. There's a war on wokeism, so-called wokeism. There's a war on Black intellectualism. So I'm going to play this video for a second.
Conviction based on what I already knew. I said, I'll go to the meeting, and at the meeting I said that UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying overhead, and that was it.
And it's been reported in a couple interviews that you've mentioned there's a federation of alien species. Do all of the alien species kind of work together, or is there warring species that war with each other?
Well, I only know about the Galactic Federation, and I don't know much about it, so I shouldn't talk about it. But they are concerned about what's going on in the world, and they have been working through individuals. They'll pick out a few individuals and visit them, or talk to them telepathically, or send information to them by channeling. I have a very close friend who was writing a second book right now with channeling from a species called the Basidas. Very few people have heard of it. They have a deal that they won't interfere. But I think that there's also a loophole if things get bad enough that they would make exceptions, but we can't count on them. I mean, maybe we can count on them, but we shouldn't count on them because they say, you clean up your act. You're in charge, it's your planet, and if it comes to a dead end, it will be because you let it or made it a dead end. Because it wasn't necessary and you had everything going. It's one of the best planets in the whole universe. And everybody covets the fact that it's so good, and you have been destroying it. And this is something that we've tried to let you know by various ways over a long period. In the individual communications always say, look, there are things you've got to do. Stop your clear cutting, stop your fracking, stop using fossil fuels, because there are better ways. Own conviction based on what I already knew. I said,
So with that being said, we're going to get back to the presentation at hand. Get back to the slides. Put the rice bowls in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Great Awakening period. And we out here cooking up the Illuminati. We're cooking them up. We're cooking them up because we in the process of reset. So since we're in reset, everything is being manipulated. The atmosphere, like I said, is being manipulated to where they can no longer hold form, right? Whether you could say they draconian reptilian or whatever the case may be, hybrids or whatever, but you cannot negate that something weird is taking place on the planet because, like I said, atmospheric changes has the ability to interface with our biological functions. Same thing that took place with Queen Elizabeth's hand, right? Not a coincidence. Now look at Donald Trump's hand. Not a coincidence. The manipulation of the atmosphere. Then you got birds keep exploding in the Bay Area, the same place where the air was manipulated, where they had Lake Tahoe, where you had that pestilence going on over there. And so this is also in the same geographical area. So birds keep exploding in the Bay Area. Nobody knows why. Because the atmospheric changes in itself has a certain cymatic vibration. So if you're not connected to the mycelium network of nature, and you're not able to harmonize with the circadian rhythm with the cobalamin that's able to synthesize the melanin in the gut and resurrect the Christ body, if you don't have the ability to do that, what's going to happen is, like I said, you're going to go through a process of zombification, or your sixth ether is going to dissipate into nothingness, right? Meaning that you don't have the ability to resurrect yourself. Everything as far as like the Great Awakening period, the last thing that's going to be on the table is all about the energy of the sun and genetic self-preservation. That's what it's all about. That's what racism is all about. Genetic self-preservation, atmospheric changes, climate change, right? The energy of the sun. So like I said, as above, so below, the law of correspondence. So if the atmosphere is being manipulated, that's how you know that the waters is being manipulated. A rare orange shark with ghostly white eyes captured in the first of its kind sighting. So like I said, and then you just had an earthquake at the Drake Passage, had a 7.2 earthquake, a magnitude of it, and that's over there by the Arctic Peninsula. And Drake, not a coincidence that he's putting out an album called Iceman. The Drake Passage is at the Arctic Peninsula, and Drake is putting out an album called Iceman. So how you know that the liquidation process is not going to create, a form of cryogenic weather in New York City over the course of time? Just a coincidence? I don't know, but who knows? That's just a thought that I had. So like I said, atmospheric changes, like I said, because the consciousness is starting to raise up. Human consciousness has the ability to manipulate physical matter to where it's able to activate earthquakes. 10 earthquakes. So you got 10 earthquakes over M5 in 24 hours. Is something coming? Most definitely. Most definitely everything is coming out because, like I said, this is the activation of the scroll of all. The scroll of all, the chakra system of planet Earth. That's what you got to understand. Because then when you get to Dr. York's publication, The Millennium Book, it talks about how the entire East Coast of America, including Florida, Delaware, North Carolina, Virginia, New York, and many others, will be underwater within the next 10 years due to global warming and the raising of the sea level. That is the activation of the seven thunders, which is the seven plagues, right? That activates the seven trumpets, because the seven trumpets is not actually a trumpet. That's the solar transmission, because sound is electromagnetism. Electromagnetism that has magnetic filaments that causes a electrical conduction in the atmospheric changes. So that means that those Holy Ghost particles contain an octave vibration of 432 megahertz frequencies, which is basically non-ether activation. Omnicron atmosphere. That is the energy that's resurrecting planet Earth, that's causing your so-called global warming. So, like I said, this is where you get into the golden age, where you activate the golden light body. You must have an aura by way of authenticity to get to the next level as we get through the transitional phase of the golden age. So it was not a coincidence when you look at the prefix of the word authentic, you get AU, which is short for aura, which is gold, the golden light body. Do you have the glow? Do you have the ability to extrapolate information at a high level while still being balanced, energetically, physically, and spiritually at the same time? That's what's going to cultivate the glow for the golden age. You got to be energetically balanced, because equilibrium in itself is the embodiment of God. And it's only extracted by way of gamma radiation. So that's why I said you got to understand, the resurrection process. It's an alchemical process. So they got the super moon, super blood moon, the partial solar eclipse coming up September 7th and the 21st. And then you got to understand something. You got about, 3 trillion trees on the planet, and there's about 2 billion stars or 2 million stars in the Milky Way star constellation. And the trees are tethered connected to the Milky Way star constellation, which is the galactic center. So that means that during the times when you have a solar eclipse, you should be tree hugging, because you're going to get those activations, kind of like the same thing that took place with the avatar, because the avatars, they connected to their hair follicles to the tree to get downloads from the library. And the library is the epitome of Libra, which is balanced energy. You have to be balanced, your heart and mind, in order to harmonize with the energies that's transmitting from the fifth dimensional frequencies of the star Polaris, which is the galactic center, that's transmuting to the trees. You have to get back into nature. So just like you can get information from books, you can get information from nature at the same time. You just got to sit the fuck down and be still and be quiet. You have to turn down the outside world to hear what's going on inside. And that's how you do that. Connect with nature. Connect with yourself. So like I said, you have to connect with nature as much as possible, because like I said, the more you see the rise of artificial intelligence, the more you're going to see the decline of authenticity. You got to keep your golden body, baby. So every time that you use artificial intelligence for knowledge, you take away from your own magnetism. And you're connecting yourself right back to the silver key, which is the silver cord that's connected to the moon, because the moon is the embodiment of the cube. And the cube, when you look at the geometrical shape of it, is an entrapment of energy. And then when you look at the sigil of artificial intelligence, it's the twinkle symbol that shows the crucifix. The crucifix is how you entrap energy. So you have to get away from the silver cord, the silver key, and the square energy, and spiral right back into the evolution phase of the non-etheric energies. Everything in nature spirals up, but everything that's connected to the material plane subjugates energy, because it confines it. It traps the energy. So that's why I said you got to get your authenticity back. Same thing when it comes to Black women. You got to understand who you are genetically. You have to understand that this system, the demiurge, was built around to extract your genealogy for the Canaanites, the ones that they're talking about, the cursed seed of the Bible in the book of Leviticus. The Canaanite needs the DNA of the so-called Black woman, because the so-called Black woman's DNA has the ability to give power to artificial intelligence, to where it's able to mimic the energy of the Black woman, who has the first organism in the universe, which is the prokaryotic cell. So the more you see the rise of artificial intelligence, the more you're going to see the rise of children coming up missing and the rise of Black women coming up missing. So you have to protect yourself during this time period because, like I said, they're looking for a certain bloodline. They have to look for a certain bloodline before the doomsday clock hits 12. Because when the reset happens, it's over. It's over after that. That's why they doing everything so fast right now. This is why everything is speeding up so fast. Why you think you go to work, you wake up and you go to work, and then you feel like you've been at work for 4 hours, right? Everything is starting to speed up. It's causing time dilation. They're trying to speed everything up because, like I said, they know the lunar phase is starting to phase out. So protect the Black woman. Like I said, they need your energy. They need your genetic format because they don't have the genetics to get to the next level. They don't have the ability to get to the galactic center. So again, like I said, pay attention to the moon energies, right? We not lunar people. And then, like I said, the fall of the de facto corporation. Everything that you see that's taking place within the simulation is operated by a demonstrative government. And that demonstrative government is activated by way of fraud. You live in a fraudulent system that was built on imperialism that created economic disenfranchisement amongst, humanity. So the board of governors of the Federal Reserve System closed down permanently. Not a coincidence. Then you had all that stuff that took place in Washington, D.C., and that was the coronation of kingship for Donald Trump. Luciferian moon magic. They're trying to ramp up the Luciferian moon magic because their corporate enterprise is starting to be shut down because you can't bring synthetic energy into the golden age. As I was telling you, everything that's connected to the 3 city states is lunar energy. And we talked about the Drake Passage, the 7.2 earthquake at the Arctic Peninsula, and Drake is coming out with an album called Iceman. Not a coincidence. Iceman, Arctic Peninsula, 7.2, pole shift. Hello. These are all dog whistles telling you what's going to be taking place. You just got to understand the symbolism. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to talk to you guys for a second. I'm going to give a brief synopsis. Now, everybody's talking about, the return of the Anunnaki, but when it's actually talking about the resurrection of ancient DNA that's connected to the architects of the original owners of the planet, when you talk about the seeds of Enki, the seeds of Enki are the original architects that's connected to this landmass. So when they're talking about the return of the Anunnaki during the time of November, they're just basically telling you that November is the epitome of the number 11, which is the dualistic energy of Jack and Boas, which is the tuning forks of the universe. So this is the process when the veil is the thinnest during the times of November, to where you have these new energies that's coming to the planet. And these new energies is either going to resurrect you or it's going to make you devolve into a state of zombification, which is why you're seeing, the amplification process of many different animals, such as the deer, the rabbit, and the squirrel having all these, forms of pestilence all over their body. So you're seeing atmospheric changes by way of cymatic vibration, because light is the only thing that's able to manipulate this physical existence, because it's able to split the photon. We talk about the end of the lunar energies, Cracker Barrel, Codex. So reset. That's what this video basically, that's the synopsis of it. So I'm going to speak to you guys for a second. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, everything that you're seeing taking place right now when it comes to Donald Trump, this is nothing but Luciferian moon magic that's based on the coronation of kingship by putting him in office to basically create a cybernetic dictatorship or a totalitarian dystopia that's based on full surveillance and full control by a police state. So it's one of those things where they're going to ramp up the lunar magic so much to the point they know that you cannot escape judgment that's going to be facilitated by solar cycle 25. And the people who's connected to the energy of the moon, they're going to phase out. And the reason that is because, like I said, sixth ether is a spirit, and a spirit cannot resurrect into a soul. And the only thing that vibrates on the energy of authenticity has to have a soul that's connected to the four basic elements of the soul, which is thinking, reasoning, understanding, and willpower. You got to have willpower and authenticity in order to get to the next level in the golden age that's cultivated by the energy of the sun. It's not cultivated by the damn energy of the moon. The moon magic in itself is what locks down your DNA. That is what you call light code lockdown. That is the cryogenic state. It locks down and freezes your DNA because the moon is being controlled by the parasites, and the parasites is controlled by the nanocytes, and the nanocytes is inside the technology that is also interconnected with artificial intelligence. That's why I said stay away from that moon magic bullshit. Anybody who's giving you the veneration of the moon or whatever they're telling you, that's all connected to the material side. Yeah, you can. The only thing that the moon is good for is being able to materialize physical existence, because that's what the dualistic paradox is all about. It's all about the three-dimensional illusion by way of people, places, and possessions. But the golden age is cultivated by an aura of authenticity, a vibration. Because when you have a certain vibration, you don't need external stimulation. You don't need all this other stuff that's connected to their illusionary world. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, be very critical during these time periods. These moon energies is going to turn people into lunatics, and their parasites is going to amplify, and they're going to start to attack you, because parasites have the ability to read the magnetic field of a certain individual who was vibrating at a high vibrational frequency. The more you vibrate, the more these parasites is going to pull you down. They're going to try to extract your light. The more you raise up in vibration, your family is going to attack you. People on social media is going to attack you. People who you thought was your friends is going to attack you because you're vibrating too high, because the moon is a representation of the old world and the sun is a representation of the ancient world that's coming back to reverse the polarity of the 6,000-year curse. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, end of transmission.
Be Frankie. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Man, my auntie passed last night. This is a sad life, I'm trying to get my cash right. Past bright, yeah, I'm shining like a flashlight. Trying to take off quick, might catch a fast flight. I'm mad tight, shitting on her where my ass wipes. Staying away from old friends, they all seem fake to me. Hating me, cause I'm getting dough just like the bakery. I'm tired of a mediocre life. I got hopes of Mike's fiend smoking pipes. This the second song that I wrote tonight. Haters smoking spite, how we got such a focused sight. I done flirted with death. 98 was the birth of the best. Grass cut from the surface I met. Rhymes I steadily spew, my hope will never be through. When it's all said and done, they'll remember me too. Life's a trip, regardless if the lace is tied. I'm spitting dope on my listeners, I make them high. The media got your brains baked and fried. Great supply, take your eyes and replace them with the ancient lies. I'm too cold, I spit hot. New flows for hip-hop, a few shows and get guap. New clothes, no wristwatch. I don't really care about your materialistic. Spazzing in the booth from iller than venereal sickness. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Gotta count my blessings even though I'm daily stressing. See, my brain is a weapon, I can use it for protection. Used to take dabs off the rip like collections. Flows very often relative to beat selections. Blocked your number, cut you off, I hope you get the message. I hold the mic close to me like it's supposed to be. Haters act like they don't notice me, but I'm too focused, see. I stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out, we're stuck in the matrix.